What if the most dangerous thing inside a luxury holiday villa wasn't gold, or cash, or hidden cameras, but paper? Not just any paper. Letters. Letters so carefully hidden that they were built into the wall itself. Letters that were never logged, never disclosed, never shared with Buckingham Palace. Letters that, according to those who allegedly saw them, were not emotional, not nostalgic, not personal. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. They were strategic, and that's where this story really begins. On the surface, the villa looked like exactly what you'd expect. Bright light, quiet halls, a place designed for privacy and rest. A retreat, the kind of place where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. No chaos, no confrontation, no secrets loud enough to echo. But secrets don't need noise to be dangerous. They just need time. The discovery didn't begin with suspicion. That's the unsettling part. It began with something ordinary. A routine check. A structural inspection. The kind of thing that usually ends with a clipboard and a signature. Until one wall didn't sound right. Until a panel shifted. Until someone realized the space behind it was never meant to be empty. Ask yourself this. Why would anyone hide a safe inside a bedroom wall instead of a vault? Why not destroy what's inside? Why preserve it? And more importantly, why preserve it in secret? When the concealed safe was allegedly opened, it wasn't packed with jewelry or cash. It was organized, meticulous, bundled correspondence, handwritten pages, carefully folded documents. Some old, some recent, some marked, others deliberately plain. That alone raised alarms. Because people who are innocent don't archive leverage. Here's where the tension deepens. These letters were not part of any official royal record. No disclosure, no notification, no approval. And yet, they allegedly involved individuals whose names alone carry global weight. Political power, financial influence, private access. So ask yourself, if these were harmless exchanges, why keep them hidden? And if they weren't harmless, who were they really for? What made the royal family allegedly fall silent wasn't embarrassment. It was scale. The realization that something had been happening in parallel, quietly, carefully, outside the institution, beyond oversight. This wasn't about feelings. This wasn't about grievances. It was about negotiation. And that's the word that keeps coming up. Negotiations. Not requests. Not conversations. Negotiations imply leverage. They imply terms. They imply that something is being offered, and something is expected in return. So what exactly was being negotiated? Power, access, timing, silence. And why now? Because timing matters. Because global politics are fragile. Because influence no longer needs a crown to be dangerous. And because some letters, once written, can never be unwritten. The safe may have been hidden, but the implications weren't. And when the first letter was reportedly read aloud, it didn't open with warmth. It didn't open with respect. It opened with intent. And what came next would force everyone involved to ask a question they were never prepared to answer. Who was really in control all along? The first question wasn't what was inside the safe. It was why it was there at all. Because safes don't get built into bedroom walls by accident. They're planned, measured, installed when no one is watching. And whoever ordered this one didn't want convenience. They wanted concealment. Think about that for a moment. A holiday villa. A place meant for temporary stays. And yet, behind smooth plaster and carefully chosen decor, there was a structure designed to outlast furniture, outlast staff, outlast casual inspection. This wasn't something added on a whim. This was something someone expected to protect for a long time. When the panel allegedly shifted, it wasn't dramatic. No alarms. No flashing lights. Just an unnatural hollow sound where solid wall should have been. The kind of sound that makes people stop talking. The kind that turns curiosity into unease. Because walls aren't supposed to answer back. Once opened, the safe reportedly revealed its first contradiction. It wasn't crammed. It wasn't messy. It wasn't desperate. Everything inside was arranged with intention. Stacked. Sorted. Some envelopes worn at the edges, others startlingly pristine. This wasn't a stash. It was an archive. And archives tell stories. Here's the unsettling part. If someone wanted to hide something forever, they would destroy it. Burn it. Shred it. Delete it. But this wasn't destroyed. It was preserved. Protected. Cataloged. Why keep something secret if you never plan to use it? That question hung in the air as the contents were allegedly examined. No jewelry, no passports, no emergency cash, just correspondence, handwritten letters mixed with formal documents, some addressed, some unsigned, some with markings that didn't match any royal filing system. That detail mattered, because Buckingham Palace runs on records. Everything is logged. Every letter, every meeting, every exchange. And these didn't exist in that world. So who were they meant to answer to? Investigators reportedly noticed another pattern almost immediately. The placement of the safe itself. Not near an office, not near a study, but in the main suite. Close, personal, accessible at any hour. Ask yourself this. If these letters were dangerous to others, why keep them within arm's reach? Unless the danger wasn't just in their exposure, but in their possession. Because leverage only works if you can reach it quickly. As pages were allegedly removed, one thing became clear. This wasn't sentimental correspondence. No emotional language. No nostalgia. No personal longing. The tone was measured, controlled, strategic, cold, even. It's hard to overstate how alarming that is. People write emotionally when they're hurt, strategically when they're planning, and planning implies an endgame. The moment that reportedly shifted the atmosphere completely came when someone noticed faint impressions on certain pages. Pressure marks, as if other letters had once rested on top of them, as if some pieces were missing. And that raised a terrifying possibility. What if this safe wasn't the full story? What if this was only what remained? Because suddenly, this wasn't just about what was found. It was about what might have already been removed, shared, acted upon. And then came the realization that changed the tone from suspicion to alarm. Some of the letters weren't one-sided. They had replies. And those replies came from people who, publicly and officially, would later insist they had never communicated at all. And that's when the question stopped being "what is this?" and became "who else knows about it?" Because if these walls could hide a safe, what else had been hiding in plain sight all along? Here's the part that made seasoned observers uneasy. These weren't random names. The correspondents tied to those letters weren't distant acquaintances or polite well-wishers. They were people whose decisions ripple across borders. People whose signatures move markets. People whose phone calls don't go unanswered. And that's where the discomfort deepened. Because influence isn't dangerous when it's visible. It becomes dangerous when it operates quietly, off the books, beyond institutional awareness. And according to those familiar with the contents, that's exactly what made these letters so troubling. Ask yourself this. Why communicate in handwritten letters in an era of encrypted messaging? Why choose paper over platforms designed for secrecy? The answer, some believe, is permanence. Digital messages can be denied. Servers can be wiped. Accounts can vanish. But letters? Letters live. They can be locked away, retrieved, produced at exactly the right moment. That's leverage. What reportedly stood out wasn't just who the letters came from, but how they were written. The tone was formal but not stiff. Familiar but not friendly. Respectful without deference. This wasn't fan correspondence. This wasn't outreach. This was negotiation language. Words chosen carefully. Sentences structured to imply mutual benefit. Subtle reminders of access. Gentle nudges about timing. Nothing explicit enough to quote in isolation. But together? A pattern. And patterns are what investigators follow. One alleged detail raised eyebrows immediately. Several letters referenced conversations that were never logged anywhere else. No official meetings. No recorded calls. No palace briefings. Yet the writers spoke as if ongoing dialogue was understood. That contradiction mattered. Because Buckingham Palace doesn't miss things like that. If conversations were happening, they should have been known, managed, documented. But these weren't. So where were they happening? And who authorized them? The deeper reviewers went, the clearer it became that this wasn't about personal networking. It was about parallel channels. Conversations happening alongside official diplomacy, but not within it. Two lanes running side by side. One visible, one hidden. That realization allegedly sent shockwaves internally. Not outrage. Not panic. Silence. The kind of silence that comes when people realize the rules they thought were fixed weren't. And then there was the financial undertone. Not direct transfers. Not obvious promises. But references to future collaborations. Private initiatives. Support, alignment, shared interests. Language that sounds harmless until you realize how often it appears in influence deals. Ask yourself this. When someone powerful offers support, what do they usually expect in return? That question became impossible to ignore when one letter reportedly referenced a timeline. Not a date, but a window. A moment when certain conditions would be most favorable. Favorable for what? That's when concern reportedly shifted into something sharper. Because timing implies coordination, and coordination implies intent. The royal family's alleged response wasn't dramatic. There were no public moves. No statements. Just internal recalibration. A quiet understanding that something had been operating beyond the perimeter. And that understanding carried a heavy implication. If these letters had stayed hidden, would anyone have ever known? And if some were already removed, who might already be acting on what was written? But the most unsettling discovery was still waiting. Because buried among the correspondence was one letter that didn't ask for anything at all. It offered something instead. And once that page was read, there was no going back. What does it mean when a letter doesn't ask for anything? That was the question that reportedly stopped everyone cold. Because requests are easy to understand. Favors, introductions, access. Those are familiar. But an offer? An unsolicited offer? That changes the power dynamic completely. The letter in question didn't open with pleasantries. No small talk. No context setting. It moved straight to the point, outlining value, timing, and discretion in a way that felt rehearsed. As if this wasn't the first draft. As if the language had been tested before. And that's when the phrase resurfaced again, whispered in rooms that suddenly felt much smaller. They weren't just letters. They were negotiations. Negotiations imply terms. They imply leverage on both sides. And most importantly, they imply that something is already on the table. Here's where the emotional weight really set in. Because if this was a negotiation, then the question wasn't whether influence was being discussed. It was who stood to gain the most from it. The wording allegedly avoided specifics, but the intent was unmistakable. References to future alignment, to mutually beneficial positioning, to moments when visibility could be shaped or withheld. These weren't abstract ideas. They were actionable. Ask yourself this. Who has the authority to promise visibility? To shape narratives? To open doors that others can't even see? And more unsettling, who believed those promises could be delivered? As the letters were reportedly compared side by side, something else emerged. Consistency. The same strategic phrasing across different correspondence. The same careful balance of confidence and restraint. This wasn't improvisation. It was a framework. A playbook. That realization allegedly hit harder than any single name on any envelope. Because frameworks don't belong to moments. They belong to strategies. And strategies are built with foresight. This is where the royal family's reaction reportedly shifted again. Not anger. Not denial. Something quieter. A recognition that whatever this was, it didn't begin with the discovery of the safe. It began long before that. Because strategies take time. They take patience. They take an understanding of institutions and their blind spots. They require knowing where oversight ends and opportunity begins. And someone, somewhere, had known exactly where that line was. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. Publicly, there had been claims of isolation, of being cut off, of having no access, no influence, no voice. And yet privately, these letters suggested the opposite. Active engagement, ongoing dialogue, strategic positioning. Both couldn't be true. So which one was performance? And which one was real? As discussions reportedly unfolded behind closed doors, one concern overshadowed all others. If these negotiations had succeeded, even partially, the consequences wouldn't be personal. They would be institutional. Reputations, alliances, credibility, all vulnerable to exposure if even a single letter surfaced at the wrong moment. That's when the safe stopped being viewed as storage. It became insurance. Because documents like these aren't just kept to remember the past. They're kept to influence the future. And the final blow came with a realization no one wanted to voice out loud. One letter referenced a conversation that hadn't happened yet. Not a summary. Not a follow-up. A preview. Which meant the letters weren't closing a chapter. They were setting the stage for what came next. And that raised the most dangerous question of all. If this was the plan, how much of it was already in motion?